Okay, we're just a second. While we're getting started here. It'll take a minute while we get Dragon set up, and apologies for starting a minute late. So I'm just going to extend another invite, and hopefully he'll drop in here in just a minute. So meantime, just give you a bit of an overview. Our agenda today is mainly to look at some of the aspects of working within ProSolo and ways that we can start to make better sense of social learning processes rather than processes that are confined within. Okay, we're just a second. We're getting started here. It'll take a minute while we get Dragon set up. Than processes that are Okay, see a few of you joining. Welcome here. As I mentioned, we're still a few minutes away from officially kicking off. Just waiting for Dragon to join in. I see we've got 30 plus folks online currently, and once we get a few more on, we'll be going. But so just give me a second while I pause, fire out another invite to Dragon just to make sure he can get in. Okay, so just while we wait to make sure we can get Dragon in here, I just want to talk about a few things related to the course. I see that there's been a fair bit of action in the discussion forum so far. Good, we've just got Dragon joining us here. Hey, Dragon. So I was just doing a quick introduction here, so if you want to try your mic and your video, that would be good. So far with the course, we have kicked off as of today. And so a lot of you, I believe, have had a bit of a chance to dive in through the forum. There's probably a few challenges, if you will, that arise in these kinds of experiences. So we want to try and emphasize that with this distributed type of a structure to a MOOC, that's not necessarily unusual, even though it can be perhaps at times a little bit frustrating or even disconcerting. Because at the regular course, what you're essentially doing is getting comfortable with the content. When you take a course that's structured the way that we've structured this, what you actually have is a range of wayfinding activities that you engage in first. So that means that before you can get down to making sense of the course and the course content, you actually have to spend some time just trying to make sense of where are things happening, how is the conversation going, and so on. And so with this session here, what we're hoping to do is really just give you a bit of an introduction to how this dual approach works. I'm going to talk a little bit about the profile creation and credentialing pipeline. Then we're going to, I'll turn things over to Dragon to talk a little bit about ProSolo and a few of the other activities that need to go. So that's roughly our overview of the session. We're going to stay a maximum of 30 minutes. We want to keep these sessions short so that people actually show up or attend. And so that's about it. So for starting points, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the experience in this type of a format is one of trying to foster and encourage you as individual learners to have an opportunity to dig deeper into some learning opportunities that you perhaps haven't had in the past. Now, I've just want to foster by haven't had in the past, I mean one where you as an individual are part of peers that is in a MOOC that's structured by some level of faculty engagement. So it differs from a regular MOOC, which is heavily faculty engaged, meaning the faculty members have articulated the content, the resources, and you follow a pathway. But by the same account, it also differs from what you see with a regular open learning experience, such as what you might have on Twitter or Facebook, where you 100% define and engage in activities on your own. So we're realizing there's some value in the structure that you see in a traditional MOOC, namely the sequential pathways through content, but there's also value, we think, in the emerging and social practice activities of learning. So that's what we're trying to do essentially with this particular format, and that's why we've dubbed it this general idea of a dual layer MOOC. Now, what we've done additionally then, in addition to some of those elements, is we have a series of tools and resources such as Quick Helper. If you aren't familiar with it, you've seen it mentioned in the course previously or at one of the recordings earlier. That's where we're basically giving you an opportunity to ask help and direct it to particular individuals in the forum. We also have a group chat. Initially, we thought we would keep that open all the time, meaning you could use the group chat anytime you wanted to dive in, but we've decided that because of making sure that you actually connect with people, we're going to do a smaller set schedule. In future courses, we might have it open constantly, but that requires, obviously, you have enough students online that are engaging. So that's a quick overview, and we've done this in previous sessions, both recordings and Hangouts. That's how things work in the course. What we're going to do with these Hangouts on a weekly basis then is we're going to identify questions that have come up in the discussion forums, and we're going to make sure that we let you know or respond to any concerns that you've had that have come out as a result of that. So we're going to try and articulate what's not working. We're going to try and answer questions. So, for example, as I was going through the forum today, there were questions about, are we going to get our own data sets, or how are we going to work with data? And as I mentioned, week one is a dive into the content of the course, get comfortable with the idea of analytics and the definition of analytics in education. Download Tableau to start playing with it, but it's really week two is where we start working with data more actively, and then as the course progresses, you continue to work with data. So, but that's essentially what we'll do during the Hangouts. We'll get together as faculty. We won't necessarily be there regularly, meaning not all of us will be there every week, but you'll usually have 2 or 3 minimum that'll join in, and that'll give you a chance to have your questions addressed and so on. Now, another question that's come up a couple times has been around how are we going to be marked? And so what we're going to do in the next couple of days, we'll set up a set profile page, but essentially that details the assessment process. But for those of you that are looking for certificates, you have a sequence of 9 weeks where each week is going to be worth 10%. And you're going to use an assignment bank, which we're going to introduce in subsequent weeks. So the assignment bank is basically, well, you're going to introduce that this week, but it basically lists the activities that you need to do. And if you do those activities, you log into ProSolo, and Dragon will talk a little bit about the credentialing process specifically in a bit, but you log into ProSolo, and then as a result of, once you've logged in, you track that competency, and then you provide evidence that you've achieved it. And by providing evidence, that will be any artifacts that you've created, blog posts, or things you've done online, or analysis work that you've done that you append to that particular document. That then gets uploaded in ProSolo, and there's a credentialing pipeline, which you'll come across again and again as we go throughout the course, which will give you better insight into what that is. So that's a quick overview of the credentialing and the assessment structure. 10% per week. There's 10% self-reflection that's included as well. And that essentially, for those of you that are certificate seekers, that gives you a bit of the guidance on that. We're going to provide more direction on this in the coming days, but right now it's just getting the details of the course started, and we don't want to sort of fire hose you with a whole lot of related details. Another aspect that I personally have found frustrated taking MOOCs and being involved in open online courses is that it's an enormous frustration to not know who you're dealing with, meaning that you don't have the profile of the learners that are in the course. So you click on a discussion forum, you know, there's the name of the person that posted a comment, so you click on it, but it doesn't really take you anywhere. You don't really get to know who is that person. So if you haven't yet, when you log into ProSolo, you're going to, you can set up your blog, your Twitter, your related details, because we're essentially wanting to do is for you to own your own learning space. But we also want you to be able to, if you want a bit more structure, to be able to connect with peers and then to have that set of resources that are brought through the credentialing process. So the profile is important. So in ProSolo, over time, definitely if you use it over a period of time, it'll basically be your knowledge graph, meaning much like Facebook produces a social graph, which is who you know. Within ProSolo, the intention is that there's an architecture of what you know, and then by having this what you know detail articulated, you can share that with either as partly it's not an e-portfolio necessarily, but instead it's a list of supporting evidence that details who you are as a person, your links to Twitter, blogs, related site, and ultimately the ability to connect with others and follow competencies together. So in a regular instance, as I've mentioned other situations, Instagram, the social object is an image, but in ProSolo, the social object is a competence, and you're following credentials and you're following people. Over time, if there's enough learners in the system, you'll be able to have set pathways through content, meaning that you'll get a recommendation within ProSolo that says, oh, based on your learning pattern, you might want to follow this particular or achieve this particular credential through this particular pathway. So that's about it. On that note, if any of you are actively tweeting using the DALMOOC tag, the DALMOOC tag, I'll jump over there and have a quick look at it while I pass it over to Dragon to provide a little bit more of an introduction to ProSolo and go from there. Dragon.
Okay, good. So, George, as you know, we have our lovely Hangouts, and we always had troubles with that. So please let me know when you see the screen shared by ProSolo.
All right, right now I am seeing a black screen, so that might be if it's in Chrome, that might be the reason why it's not working. So if you're, yeah, we had a few issues with this. It's really odd. You would think that Google products like Chrome and Hangouts would work well, but apparently they don't. So, so if you want to try that again, because we didn't see anything come across on that, Dragon.
Sure. We're going to give it another try. Anything?
Nope, sorry, nothing's coming up, Dragon. All right, well, in that case, we won't belabor the concept. We've had a few issues with Hangouts on this, but unfortunately, it's been a little bit hit and miss when it comes down to the screen share. So instead, maybe what I'll do, Dragon, is if you can talk a little bit about how you think users, or what kinds of activities you think users might use over the duration of the course in ProSolo. And I think it's worth emphasizing, just before you get into the activities, it might be worth emphasizing a little bit up front that we're still in active development work, and so as we've said on several locations, this is an active experiment, and so we're looking forward to having individuals engage with the system and finding ways to improve and make advances on the system as well. So in the interim, at least, if you can talk a bit about what kinds of things would a learner want to do in that system, and what's the impact of engaging in that system.
All right, thanks, George. So general idea of ProSolo is to link the informal and formal levels, as well as individual and social levels. So probably when you logged in into ProSolo, you noticed that ProSolo is a very social intensive application. In that sense, the first thing that you will notice is an activity stream that is presenting all the activities that were publicly shared by anybody inside of ProSolo. The whole point of that activity stream, although it's everybody who publicly share them, who sign up with ProSolo and perform some of these activities public, is that we want to encourage that early connections that people will engage with each other. The other component that is very significant for ProSolo is these types of recommendations based on the similarity that are happening between different individuals, as well as that we are able also to recommend based on the recency of the activities, as well as geographic location. So as you can see, the whole point is that we facilitate the connections that people may have inside of ProSolo. From that point on, the work with ProSolo can be described within three major activities. First one is plan. And inside of ProSolo, with the plan activity, you will easily find an interface. When you go into the plan, you will see that we are offering a weekly activity, and we call that weekly activity as a small credential. So just all you need to do is basically to navigate through these weekly credentials, sign up for that credential, and then start working on that credential. The second component or second part of the workflow with ProSolo is learn. Once you have enrolled into a particular credential as an outcome of your planning activity, then you are requested to go into the learn page of ProSolo. Again, fairly straightforward. Inside of the learn page of ProSolo, you will see that there is one component which is called competencies. Inside of these competencies, you will see that once you click on these competencies, there's each week 1, 2 to 3 competencies. And each of these activities inside of those competencies are something that we recommend that you complete while working on ProSolo, while working on that particular competency. However, one important thing when you are working there is you are free to first of all, add your own activities and you add your own resources. In that way, you are curating your own resources inside of ProSolo. The second important thing is when you are working on some of these credentials, you can invite some of the colleagues that are in the course so that you can then compare each other's types of activities, as well as be able to share resources and discuss while you are working on some of these individual credentials. Once you think that you produced enough evidence that you have particular competency, you are then requested to tag your credential as complete. Once you have that complete, then there is the third step of ProSolo. And in that third step of ProSolo, we call it that you need to create your profile or to present yourself. However, at this point, we are always just talking about yourself and creating and documenting some of these resources. So now, when you turn into the third step, you are then recommended to go into the profile page of ProSolo. And then into profile page of ProSolo, you will see the credential that you just completed. For that, each credential that you just completed, you will be able to ask for assessment. In this course, for assessment, we recommend that you do peer review. So basically, find some of these peers, enter their names in ProSolo, find them, and send them a request. Once you receive such a request from some of your peers, you will see in the upper part of the screen small notifications. Those are like small circles that are helping you to see easily those requests. So once you accept that request, you can then go ahead and easily find a way how to accept or reject particular types of competencies based on the information that your colleagues supplied in the course. Of course, be kind to your peers and provide them with some feedback so that they can also know the reasons potentially why you didn't accept some of their competencies or why you did accept some competencies. Final thing, once you completed that evaluation form, you will return it back to your peer, and your peer will receive again similar type of notification. That notification again will indicate whether they get the recognition from you for that competency or credential or not. However, what is now interesting is in ProSolo is that each of these credentials can be published and publicly presented in your ProSolo profiles. So based on these publicly presented profiles in ProSolo, you will be then able to establish your general profile of what you know, what you collect in this course, as well as share it with others. More importantly, you will also be supplying evidence why you have particular competency. So in that case, you can consider that with ProSolo that we are experimenting with a complete novel process of unbundling learning processes, and that we are not necessarily dealing with a just complete course, but with smaller components that are justifying that you have evidence for particular competency. So this is the general process for ProSolo. Please just note one more thing. ProSolo has one additional functionality, which is called Daily Digest. This is a very important functionality for interacting with the entire community inside of ProSolo. Daily Digest is something that is collecting all the blogs that were entered into ProSolo by each of you. All the RSS feed that you entered into ProSolo are also visible there, as well as all the tweets that you entered there with two hashtags, DALMOOC, and Learning Analytics. Once you have entered those, we are harvesting all these information in social media, and then we are generating a daily email which is providing information so that you get easy access and become aware of what's happening there. Another important component of that process is that you can easily curate if you see those daily digests from ProSolo from your profile and then connect them with your competencies. Of course, if you don't want to use ProSolo, Daily Digest for the entire course is publicly available. Eventually, you will also be getting personalized Daily Digest based on your own preferences that are not necessarily shared with everybody else. So these are brief information. Unfortunately, Google technology is not serving me well today, although I'm generally good friend with them, but hope that we will be able to help you with this information and with this brief overview. George, over to you.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the overview. There's a lot of activity you can engage in. I was just reading someone on Twitter was stating that, oh, gee, perhaps your pre-course survey didn't consider enrollees might actually want to learn analytics. And so, I think that's exactly what we want you to do. In fact, if you look at the activities of week 1, if you've had a chance to review the discussions there, you'll have a chance to look at some of the topics or the areas that we're looking at. So it very much is, once we've articulated this, and as we stated early on, you don't have to do anything in ProSolo, and you certainly don't have to do anything in social media. If you're comfortable and if you prefer only to stay within the edX environment, you can stay within the edX environment. So I just want to emphasize that this isn't necessarily a critical component. I mean, we think it adds a richer learning experience, but as someone else noted on Twitter, what if I don't care what others think? And of course, that's fully acceptable if you don't care what others think and if you don't want to learn with others. So feel free to engage in any way that you would like. Other than that, I think that's about all that we wanted to do today. So thanks very much for joining us. We want to keep these sessions short so that they're worth diving into, and we look forward to continuing to refine and sort of improve the platform itself. Now, I should mention that over the next several weeks, as we stabilize as you get any range of hundreds or thousands of students into ProSolo, there may be a few periods of glitches, and I know a few of you have had comments where that happens occasionally. Typically, that's a short-term thing. We reset things quick, and they should be back to normal. So I appreciate your patience and tolerance as we're trying to experiment and play with this. And as I said, for those of you that are just here for the analytics, then feel free to spend your time directly in edX, where the primary content delivery will occur. On that note, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great night, and look forward to continuing to learn with you.